Experience is always better in a group. The Christian Experience doubly so. We are just a group of gamers that love to talk about life, God, and video games in no particular order. So whether you're a newbie or a grizzled agent like us, we want to help each other roll the level.
Welcome to another episode of Roll the Level, the podcast where we talk about life, God, and video games in no particular order. My name is Matt. I am double caffeinated this morning, so I'm a little hyperactive, but it's good. I am joined today by my two co-hosts. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm still sick.
Still sick. It's true. You've actually got black lung right now.
Yeah, I got it all out of me before the podcast, so hopefully it doesn't show up.
All right, it's good. It's good. Dealing with that lung infection. Hopefully get that squared
Yes,
up.
yes, I shall.
We missed you last week, by the way.
We did.
I liked the episode, though. I listened. The God buff was hilarious.
The God buff?
I laughed really hard, so I appreciate it. I want that on a shirt.
All right. Oh, man, we really got to get some merch. Let us know in the comments if you want merch. We'll do it. It's good. And my other co-host, who needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway, my best friend and gaming cohort, Dame. How you doing, buddy?
I am exhausted, but I am giddy as all get out because last night I did something that I didn't think it was ever possible to do. I unlocked a triumph in Destiny 2. I am going to get my Reaper jersey, my Gambit Prime Reaper jersey. I am so excited about that today. So totally worth the lack of sleep. But you can call me Reaper.
Well, it's a big accomplishment, man. Like, it's a lot of work to get that thing figured out. So my big accomplishment last night from playing video games was managing to spear a rabbit in Conan Exiles. So I was pretty excited about that. So it then literally took me another 25 minutes to figure out how to cook the thing.
I was going to ask if that was the next step.
It was, and it was a 25-minute step.
Wow.
Because apparently I don't read, so it's good. But I don't want to talk about that today. I actually want to talk about kind of a fun topic has to do with characters in video games, specifically characters that along that hero's journey have sacrificed them for the party, sacrificed themselves for the party, or have taken one for the team, so to speak. There's so many good stories out there in the games that we play. And we just even here with the three of us represent a massive amount of games that have been played. And when it comes to story games, that's more you guys than me. I like to shoot things, but
I like the slow burn.
But that being said, I have played some incredible story-based shooters, so it's good. But the question I have for you guys today, and maybe Dan, I'll get you to start us off.
Yeah.
What are like maybe one or two games where like a hero in that game has sacrificed? Like, what were some of the most monumental sacrifices in video games from your perspective?
Ooh, that's a huge question and a lot to draw on there because I am a big fan of games that have good story and have that kind of emotional arc to them. But I think the two that really stand out for me are one is Mordin Solus in Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect 3 has been out for quite some time. If you have not played the Mass Effect series, at least the first 3 of those games, the ending
Andromeda is good. It is good. I like Andromeda.
All right, we won't argue about that here. Honestly, I have not given Andromeda a chance.
I played it pre-patch. I played it post-patch. It is still good. It may have some bugs here and there, and I'm very mad the DLC will not finish the side quest I really liked, but it was good.
Okay, well, I will take your word on that, and maybe one of these days
it's worth
I
trying
will.
For like the $10 it goes on sale every 5 to minutes.
And
there you go.
That's true. That's true.
I will watch a YouTube gameplay of it.
Okay,
I'll commit to that.
So,
go ahead.
So a little bit of context here. Mordin, you meet him and pretty early on in the series, and he's a lovable character, fantastic character. But Mordin has this past of being involved in a pretty heinous scientific experiment that really impacts an entire other race of aliens. And there's this moment in Mass Effect 3 where Mordin makes this choice to stay behind to right the wrongs that he was a part of. And it's this really it's a beautiful but heartbreaking moment as he sacrifices himself to undo everything wrong that his prior team had been a part of doing. So just a beautiful, beautiful moment of sacrifice. I think one of the other ones, and again, gets in the spoilery territory. So if you have not played Final Fantasy 15, I want to ask you to cover up your ears for a couple of minutes here.
I mean, realistically, we're talking about characters who sacrifice themselves in video games. If
Usually comes at
we
the
should
end of the
assume that they're
story.
spoilers, I feel
Yeah.
like.
that's
I mean,
true.
I'll put a big spoiler warning on the description, but I mean, come on, it's the nature of what we're talking about.
All right, so Final Fantasy 15. I know Sarah and I strongly disagree.
I will give it another chance because I bought the Royal Edition and the Pocket Edition, so I have to like one of them.
Okay. So I think the thing that I appreciate about Final Fantasy 15 is the character arc of the Chocobros, as well as in particular Noctis. Noctis begins the game as spoiled rich kid that has just about everything handed to him. He's on his way to marry his beautiful, beautiful bride from another country that's been all set up for him, and like he's just the bee's knees, and the wheels just come off, metaphorically and figuratively, and by the end of the game, you see a Noctis who is willing to lay down his life for not just his friends but for his world. And his sacrifice saves the world, and it's a really there's this moment of reflection at the end where it's such a beautiful moment of realization of this is my purpose and this is why I'm here, and all of this has been leading up to this, and I need to make the choice to do this. And it was just a good choice. Good storytelling. I'm sorry, I've just kind of lost it.
No, you're good. You're good. That's cool, man. That's cool. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yep. Sarah, what about you? What are your two?
You're gonna think it's the Final Fantasy podcast.
No, trust me. By the time I get there, it will no longer be the Final Fantasy podcast. So you're good.
Well, first Final Fantasy X.
Okay.
Because Yuna, from the beginning, her whole goal through the game, even though the main character Tidus does not know it yet, but her pilgrimage is about sacrificing herself to sin, so that the world can have peace, calm. I think for 1,000 years or something.
Yeah. No,
but that is her goal.
Mm-hmm.
So when Tidus figures it out and tries to stop her 5 billion times, she doesn't change. She kind of has it leaked into her head that, hey, maybe I can be saved, but her goal is unwavering, and she will in the end want to sacrifice herself, but ho ho. And Final Fantasy 13.
Okay.
And haters gonna hate that game, but it was great and I loved it and it made me cry in the end. But like at the very end of the game, I'm not gonna say who, but 2 characters sacrifice themselves from the land above the world, falling on the lower world. They sacrifice themselves to make a pillar to stop it from happening. So that just made me bawl my eyes out.
Now,
but they saved the world.
Now, Sarah, when you're talking about Final Fantasy 13, you're talking about Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 13
no,
2, Final
13 original, not 13-2 or Lightning Returns. 13. We don't talk about Lightning Returns. It's hot garbage.
Okay.
It is a garbage fire.
No, it is hot garbage. It's a hot garbage dumpster fire.
Oh, okay.
So I just confession here, I never fully made it through Final Fantasy 13.
I love that game.
Me either.
So I had this moment where I think I saved before the last boss, or the area right before the last boss, and you cannot go anywhere.
You cannot go back.
You can't go back from there.
Nope.
And so I had not progressed far enough, or not developed my characters enough to be able to actually beat the final boss.
Yeah.
This has always been my challenge with Final Fantasy. Sorry, on side note, is that like I'm so just got to get through the thing that I don't take the time to grind out these characters and develop them. And so I get like 3/4 of the way in, I just can't beat stuff, and then I lose interest.
That's when grinding comes in. That's like my favorite part. You listen to a podcast
Yeah.
and you just chill and grind, and then you're ready to
See.
go.
That's
I'm,
when I
I'm
just
with you
switch
on that,
games.
Sarah.
I just switch games.
No,
I just
I
play
can't.
something.
It's
else.
I love
relaxing.
grinding. It is
Is
so
it?
chill. I love it.
Really?
Yeah. I get
Alright.
excited when I get to a part where I cannot progress. It's like, yes, I get to chill and just like
Man.
grind forever. Just do circles.
How do we all play co-op games together? like, on such the opposite spectrum here.
Well, look, if you go back though to our Twitch stream a couple of weeks ago when we
That's
played
true,
Terraria,
yeah.
that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
that was totally that I think highlighted our differences in how
I
we
was just
play the game.
gathering.
It's so true.
Sarah's gathering, I'm exploring, Matt's building the house.
I'm
Yeah.
building this awesome house. It's so amazing.
Get
It's a
me stuff to
subterranean
build a
one. That
house.
way, if any meteors drop, they don't break our house.
Mm.
It's smart. It's good. But awesome. No, that's cool. As far as characters in video games that have sacrificed themselves, probably I'm really torn on this because I actually have 3, but I'm only gonna I'll only actually talk about 2. I'll mention the third one, so I'll start with the third one because I'm just briefly highlighting it. Would be George from Halo Reach.
Oh, I was gonna say Grey's Anatomy.
No, not that one. No, his sacrifice was incredible and sad at the same time because it really didn't actually change anything. That was the worst part about it. But anyway, the 2 I actually want to touch base on. The first one is actually from Titanfall 2. I loved that shooter. That was such a great game. One of the most underrated games of that year, which I've said
So
before.
sad face.
And I will continue to say that until everybody's played it and agrees with me. But in Titanfall 2, you're basically paired up with this Titan, a big mech essentially, and they're full AI, fully interactive. You actually make this like psychic link with them,
Yep.
so that your actions become their actions. There's this like
Bond.
fluidity about it. Yeah, there's this bond that's there, and so through a series of events at the very beginning of the game, you essentially out of necessity bond with BT, which is this. It's actually a friend of yours, Titan, but he ends up getting killed. So in an act of
take it away,
desperation, to continue the mission, you essentially bond with this thing. But you're not a pilot or anything. You're not trained as a pilot. So it's this. The whole game is about the two of you learning to interact with each other. Like you end up teaching them sarcasm, and like, it's just this incredible bond that happens in this game. And then you get to the very end of the game.
I just remembered the ending.
Right? You get to the very end of the game, and BT actually kind of tricks you into thinking that you're both going to get out of this. And so he says something in a way that makes it sound like he's got a plan to save you both. And in the very end, he basically rips you out of your pilot seat and pitches you to safety, and then sacrifices himself by putting like this massive core inside of him exploding. And you don't even have time to process it because you're literally then trying to like essentially platform your way out of this insane moment. And it's just like, it's not until the very end after you finally get out, and it literally is like you hold your breath for about 4 minutes as this whole thing happens, and you're trying to run and jump and get out of this thing. And the whole time, like, it's not until you finally get to safety where the impact of what BT does really sets in. Some of the best storytelling. Like,
Yeah, it was great.
I'm so excited for the new Star Wars game because Respawn's doing it.
Yeah.
And they've done this
Nice.
game.
And it was a short-ish game
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
did such a impactful story.
It did.
I really appreciate that.
Very character driven, very like the character writing was just excellent. The voice acting was
Yep.
incredible. But that was probably one of my favorites in recent gameplays was Titanfall 2. The other one, which if you've ever played Gears, you know exactly where I'm going with this. Probably one of the most emotional deaths or sacrificial deaths I've experienced in gaming, only because it took 3 games to get there.
Yeah.
Like they built this up for 3 games, and it had to be Dom from Gears of War 3.
Yep.
Again, like you spend like the first 2 games, you're on this arc with him, and he's on this journey of trying to find his family, and then everything just goes south. And like you're there in this emotional moment in 2 where you're like crying alongside Dom and Felix as they're going through this experience, and then in 3 is just about, you know, it's about him being just hollowed out and trying to find purpose and all this stuff. And then there's this moment in 3 where it's this insane thing where like he essentially gets in a truck and drives into a fuel tanker and blows everything up. But it's this weird mix of I'm going home, I'm going to see him again, and I'm doing this all for you guys. Like, and it's just this Like just this emotional moment, and they got this crazy soundtrack under it. And
Yep.
I'm playing it with my buddy Jordan, and we're both crying.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yeah, I remember me and my husband crying.
Oh,
with our eyes
man.
out. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it was just such an impact because you had invested so much time with these characters, and there was this incredible like brotherhood that had been established over 3 games, and then there's this moment where like, oh, it just all comes back around, and
Yeah.
you're just bawling. And I'm not even joking. I was like ugly
Yeah.
crying my way through that. Like it was bad.
Oh man.
But it's so interesting. I always love how, intentional or not, humanity can't help but reflect God, right? And who He is and what He's about. And we do it in all sorts of different things. We do it in art. We do it in storytelling. We do it in these things, unintentional or not. We, Jesus talks about that. Like if we shut up, the rocks cry out. And I think that bleeds over into even our secular culture, because we're all made in the image of God, and so even in our storytelling, right, it points back to what Christ did on the cross.
Yep.
Is anyone else blown away by that, or is it just me? Maybe it's just me.
No, I think that there's something that's absolutely fantastic about that. And this is nothing new.
Yeah.
Paul has this great conversation. I know that we've talked about this on the show before, but in Acts chapter 17, where he's walking through a marketplace in Athens, and he sees like these idols and carvings and stuff like that, and he finds this inscription that was an inscription to the unknown God, and then he ends up having this conversation with them about, hey, what you declare as unknown, I actually know who this is. And your own poets, he talks about their poetry, said, in Him we live and move and have our being. And so there's this really interesting pattern in throughout all of humanity in which God reveals Himself through the arts and through nature, and I mean, revelation is just such an amazing thing. And then you get the big revelation in the person of Jesus that is just that's just huge.
No, it's true, and I love that about our culture. We can't help but point back to the need for a savior, and it's so good. And I mean, the reality is like all of these stories are but mere reflections of what Christ has done. Right, like even when we were talking about, it was a Final Fantasy X with sacrificing for sin and stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't get any more on the nose than that.
Yeah,
It really
it was
was.
pretty much
It
blatant
really,
ripoff.
really was.
But what's great about it is like it's still such a poor reflection of what Christ actually did. Right, like there is this
The greatest sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, we've got this world that is so downtrodden because of what sin has done, and it's destroying us. It really is destroying us. And Christ and God and the Spirit and this infinite wisdom that is so far beyond us, send Christ as the Son of God to sacrifice Himself and save humanity. Like that has some pretty heavy implications. The biggest one being that there's the reality is there's nothing we can do to save ourselves. Like that is the nature of humanity. I mean, it's so funny, like watching our culture and this whole, like, anything you can do, I can do better type thing, and empowering our people and all this other stuff, right? I'm going, you know what? Yeah, that's all fine and dandy. But the reality is that we're so lost in our own sin that there's just nothing we can do about it. And as a side note, that's the only thing that actually separates Christianity. The biggest thing, I should say, not the only thing, biggest thing that separates Christianity from any other religion is that God reached down.
Yes.
We didn't reach up.
Yeah.
All right. Every other religion, it is this stepping stone process of trying to get closer to God by achieving and doing and working, and the reality is that with Christianity, it's already done. Right. I think it was J.D. Greer said, the difference between every other religion and Christianity is that every other religion, it's due. In Christianity, it's done. And it's so true. Like Christ has done everything needed to be saved through His death and resurrection on the cross. And I don't want to get too far down that road of dissecting the theology of the death and resurrection. But
Well, I want
But-
to actually
Yeah,
jump
yeah.
in there because it goes
Yeah, for sure.
the rescue plan goes even further back
yeah,
than just Jesus stepping onto the scene of human
Mm-hmm.
history in the incarnation. You know, we go even back to God's covenant with Abraham. You look back
Yeah.
in Genesis, and
Yep.
and even in that, even in striking that covenant, like God kind of plays within these rules, this very human structure of covenantal relationships. And there's a fantastic book by James Garlow called The Blood Covenant that really like outlines all that stuff. But one of the things that's fascinating about that is that in these ancient covenants there was there's basically like an exchange of blessings and curses where it was hey, like if you keep this covenant, then you know, blessed are your family, blessed are your kids, blessed are your cattle, you know, blessed is your second cousin's donkey, you know, sort of thing. And maybe it didn't extend quite that far, but you get the gist. But the opposite was true though with curses. Like if you didn't keep the terms of this covenant, and then you look at the process that God and Abraham walk through, and Abraham doesn't even walk through one of the main parts of the covenant making ceremony. It was a phase that was called the walk of death, where essentially they would split animals in two. I know it's kind of getting gross here, but they would split animals in two, and then like both parties would kind of walk in a figure eight around, you know, the carcasses. That was kind of it was kind of part of this process. But anyway, in the midst of that part of the process, God puts Abraham to sleep, and he's like, no, I got this. And so in Jesus's death on the cross, he takes on the curses of not being able to uphold the covenant. And so again, just kind of powerful thing that God, when God made this relationship, or when he set up this relationship with us, like it was in such a way where he knew that you are not going to be able to do this on your own.
Truth.
You are not cut out on your on your own.
That's true.
And so that's where there's the beauty of not only the relationship with Jesus, but when we come to him, he places his spirit in us and gives us the ability to stand up against sin and against temptation in our lives. And
that's the beauty of grace right there.
And that's
good.
the beauty of that, or one of the facets of the beauty of that.
It's true.
But there's actually a kind of charge that's a jumping off point to that from the Apostle Paul in his letter to the Philippian church, and he lays out this foundation of saying, hey, in light of a desire to be with Christ and a desire to walk with him and live a life that is worthy of that sacrifice, because in each one of these situations, right, like in each one of the heroic sacrifices, there's always a response of how do we live in light of the sacrifice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And so it's kind of the so what, like like you can have the greatest, most emotional sacrifice, but if it doesn't impact anything, or if it doesn't cause change, if nothing else in the people observing the sacrifice, or who are the most impacted by the sacrifice, then what was it worth? Like even George's sacrifice in Reach was one where, as the player, it made it that much more, even though it didn't change the situation, it made it that much more imperative that you achieve the goal.
Absolutely.
And so in this case with the thing that Paul kind of leads into, he says, hey, in your relationships with one another, in your mindset, you should have the same mind as Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature of a servant did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in the appearance of a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. And he goes on then, and he says he says in verse 12, therefore, dear brothers, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but much more now in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and act in order to fulfill his good purposes. Like we get to be a continuation of what Jesus began through his life, death, and resurrection.
Absolutely, which is pretty awesome. That there's this response that allows us to be in step with the direction that Christ is going.
Indeed.
I think that it's so amazing, like that moment when you realize what Christ has done. Like it's that moment of like, whoa, like there's this incredible grace that's been given to me that I think like you can't help but respond, right? Like when you that first time you acknowledge just the state of us, right, with sin, and then you acknowledge like and recognize the state of grace with God for us, like there's only one response, and it's like how do I follow? What do I do now? And then Paul wraps it right up and says, man, be like Christ.
Yeah.
Walk as Christ did. Walk sacrificially for one another, for your brother, for your sister, for those around you. Show that love to them. It's the fuel, man, that keeps followers of Christ going. Is that acknowledgement. Like it's amazing to me. Everything in the faith, everything in the Bible always points back to Christ on the cross in one way, shape, form, or another. And it's so good. So good. So anyway, guys, I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. Sarah, Dame, thanks so much, guys, for joining me today.
No problem.
Thanks for sharing your stories. I love your stories. It's so good. And to you, our listener, thank you so much for tuning in every week. We really do appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe on all of the things. We are on the Twitch now on Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights. Tuesday night we do some co-op streaming thanks to my crazy schedule. And then Wednesday night, Sarah is solo streaming that, which is awesome. So thanks for doing that, by the way.
No problem.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
So find us at Roll the Level on Twitter. And you can hit us up on Gmail too at rollthelevel@gmail.com. If you have any questions, comments, or thoughts, we'd love to hear them. Otherwise, we look forward to the next time where we can roll the level.